So welcome everyone to how we grew our clients' traffic by 271% in just 4 months with content optimization. Super stoked to have John here with us from Chosen Data. We have an awesome training lined up. I was just looking through the slide deck before this, and you are in for a treat. So some quick house rules. Feel free to drop questions throughout this training into the Q&A, and we will call them out throughout, so you don't need to wait until the very end. I will read those out to John. We want this to be interactive and to help you get the most out of this as possible. I know at the very end, we have a special offer that is somewhat limited, so you'll want to stick around for that as an attendee to get a chance to look at that. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to John. John, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. How's it going, everyone? So really excited about this. We're going to get into some specific examples of a 3-step process that we use on just about all of our clients to improve organic traffic. We have some highlights from specific clients, and we'll get into the process as well. So first off, just a quick about me. So my name's John. I've been doing SEO for closing on almost 10 years now. I've worked for a variety of different agencies, and then recently have co-founded an agency called Chosen Data, where I'm currently the SEO director. So for Chosen Data, we focus on really just all aspects of SEO, technical SEO, content SEO, and analytics. And we really focus on MarTech, crypto, fintech, and then health and wellness tech companies. So you could see us on a lot of different places. We'll give some links out to some of this content we produce for a lot of the big websites, Single Grain, Moz, and some others that you will recognize in the industry. But ultimately, what we really want to focus on today is the specific tactics we've used here and systematized to get consistent results across our client set. And this system works for all size websites. You'll see the one we're going to focus on most is a brain health supplement company called Cover3. They're the example above, where they basically went from little to no organic presence to almost 3xing in just 3 months. 3 to 4 months. And then the one below is a slightly larger website, about 4,000 sessions per month, that we took to about 13,000 organic sessions in less than a year. So these system and tactics, they work on different size sites. It's really helped us get consistent results across the board. So with that, we really want to dive deep today into the system and get some specific tactics that you guys can take away and use right away. So to set the stage here, as you guys know, SEO is competitive. It's only getting more competitive. All your competitors, all your clients' competitors, they're all doing SEO. So really what we find that separates kind of average SEO to getting into that above average to advanced tier is really having a repeatable system and framework that you can utilize to get those consistent results. Everybody wants to find the latest tactic, kind of the shiny new object, but really what we see is having a system is really the main way you're going to be able to get results at scale across a variety of clients that you're working on. So that's really what we want to leave you guys with today. Not necessarily a bunch of random tactics, but a system that you guys can use and implement and mold into your own processes and make your own. So first thing here, really what the process is, and on the surface, it's simple. It's stuff everybody knows. But what we're going to get into is kind of how we use it in a cohesive system together. So first step, and we'll get into all these tactically on future slides, is just keyword research. So identifying what we want to be targeting when we're optimizing a post that already exists, and actually taking a next step of creating a content brief. Quite often people use content briefs for new content. We don't always see those used for upgrading existing content. So we're going to get into that and how we apply a content brief to actually existing upgrades. Then we're going to actually, step 2 in the system is optimizing that content in the ClickFlow content editor. And we'll get into some specific features and kind of tactical ways we use ClickFlow. And then once the content, we've done the strategy, we've done the research, we've optimized it. The final step is our post-publishing workflow, which really consists of 2 things, link building and click-through rate testing, which we're going to dive pretty deep into today. So first part of the process here, keyword research and content briefs. So the main thing with keyword research that we see is there's kind of 2 things. Some people will actually write content and then try and figure out what keywords they could target later. And we always find then you end up trying to force content to rank that maybe isn't really the right intent. So we always recommend starting with keyword research and letting that inform your content plan. And then the content brief, again, we see this a lot. A lot of people are doing this nowadays when they're creating new content. The goal of these is really, we want to have all the information that a writer would need to create the best piece of content. You don't want to pass just 2 or 3 keywords over to a writer and expect them to be able to produce something better than what's already ranking. The content brief is really made to outline all those steps and all the data the writer needs to make their workflow simple. So again, we apply this to actually content upgrades from existing content and not just net new content we're creating. So for keyword research, we'll get into our process here. And again, this is focused on existing content optimization. So really thinking about search intent and the business value of the keywords is always our first and foremost thing we look for. For business value, that could be a keyword where someone's searching a product, but it could also be a keyword that's more upper funnel where they're just looking for information, and we'll use some other tactics to get them to convert later. But we do want to identify what we're trying to do with this piece of content. Are we trying to just capture top funnel keywords and build a remarketing list off the back of that? Are we trying to actually rank for, in this case, best brain supplements, a keyword that has some purchase intent behind it? Identifying that first, and then figuring out what's the actual intent of the keyword. So when we think about intent, and in this specific example here, this is an interesting set of search results. You'll see it's a pretty mixed intent. There's 2 list posts at the bottom. So 8 best brain supplements, 10 best. Then there's actually a negative article about not buying into the hype. And then at the top, there's like an overview, what is type post. So what this tells us is you can't force a product page to rank well for this type of search. So right away, without doing this research, you may be trying to optimize your product page around this term, and you're going to end up spinning your wheels. So this really is made to figure out, what do we actually need to create that has an actual chance of ranking? You can't, it's very difficult to force content to rank nowadays. That's really not the right fit. And Google is essentially telling us what they think the right fit is. So analyzing this search result is always key. So right away with this result, we know we need to do something informational. It has to be more blog or resource style versus a traditional product page. So this is where we're going to identify that. Search volume and difficulty metrics and all the standard SEO metrics, those are important. They're good to look at, but we take those as secondary after we've kind of established what the goal is and what the business value is. So again, having the right type of content is really the first step that gets skipped way too often. So as far as how we identify keywords now, so we always start with Google Search Console. So I'm actually going to jump over to the account here. And typically, I know a lot of you guys have seen this, but one of the best tactics still when you're trying to upgrade a piece is actually going into your performance report and your top pages. In this case, we want to look at this article we recently published on brain fog foods. So you're going to click into that. You can see we actually published this kind of early to mid-August, got indexed in a few days, and now we're starting to see some traction build up. But what we're really after now is looking at the queries. So this is basically going to tell us right now what we're currently getting visibility for. And this is really the first step when we're thinking about how we can optimize this post. This keyword data, we have clicks, we have our position. This is always where I like to start. So what I start to do here is start taking out the ones that I feel like have value. So in this case, it was actually kind of interesting. We were actually targeting brain fog supplements was really our main keyword. You'll see we're still kind of stuck around the page 4 area. So in this case, this might be something we want to try to figure out how we can improve these. The neuroplasticity stuff we're doing well for. We actually have strong click-through rates in position 3 and 4. But really what we want to figure out in this piece is how can we improve these brain fog rankings? So this would be something I would note down. I would take these keywords, move them into another sheet. And typically, once we have some of these keywords selected, then we like to just punch it into any keyword research tool you like. This is Keyword Keg. You could use really SEMrush. Any keyword tool will do. But you want to put in a couple of the keywords that are coming up in Search Console. And then we're going to look through this and see if there's any other words that kind of stand out to us. So these are all pretty straightforward. We have best, just supplements for brain fog, increase. Let's see if there's anything notable here. So herbal could be something that's interesting. I'm just looking vitamins, another kind of word there. We're just looking for anything different that we might want to think about. So we have that. We have our current keywords. We have some net new keywords that we might not have thought of. Then the next step from there is to actually look at the pages that are ranking. So in this case, we'll look at the #1 result from Healthline. I typically like to use Ahrefs. You can use SEMrush, any tool that'll show you the keywords this page ranks for. So once we put this in Site Explorer, now we can see all the keywords Healthline is ranking for. So a lot of times we just think of one or two keywords, but in this case, there's hundreds of keywords this content is ranking for. You'll see in position 1, if we just scroll down, there's tons. There's about 9 pages here. So what this tells us, if we have an in-depth piece, this has the potential to drive a lot of traffic, a lot more than we would have anticipated with just the brain fog keyword. The other thing this does for us is, again, I want to look for other words that we may not have thought of. So the first thing that jumps out to me is specific nutrients and vitamins. So vitamin D is something people are searching for specifically, not just supplements. I think I saw magnesium up above was another one. So these are some things we might want to think about incorporating into the article. But from a keyword standpoint, these are other ones that we didn't necessarily think of. We were just thinking about brain fog. And now we know if Healthline or another article can rank for all of these, there's a way we can do it as well. So when we think about keyword research for existing content, those are our 3 steps. And then from there, we'll make a shorter list of keywords that we're going to really center this on. But this gives us all the data we need to have those keywords that we want to target. So once we have that, the next step is now not just to give those keywords to a writer in an Excel doc or a Google sheet. We actually want to turn those keywords into a full content brief. So again, a lot of people do content briefs for new content. We don't always see people doing this when they're upgrading or optimizing existing content. And we think that's leaving a lot on the table in terms of optimization, because as we'll get into here, there's a lot more that goes into it than just kind of standard on-page SEO. So if we open up a content brief, so now that we have our keywords selected, this is our format. Any format will do, but there's kind of some key concepts you want to cover. We like to lead off with some brand information just so our writer has that. If it's an internal writer, it's still helpful. Then this is where a lot of people stop. They just send kind of those primary and secondary keywords over. The next step to that is pulling in some semantic keywords. So ClickFlow's content editor will give you those. The downside of just traditional keyword research is you basically get the same keyword over and over. So brain fog supplements, best brain fog supplements. You don't necessarily get words like vitamin D, magnesium, those complementary words that you really want to make sure are in your article, so you're covering your subject in depth. And that's where ClickFlow's content editor comes into play. We like to export it and just have the keyword data, and then we'll work within the editor a little bit later. But for these purposes, this can help jumpstart the writer and give them a lot of ideas that they may not have thought of just looking at the keyword alone. If you're an industry expert, you may think of some of those words on your own, but it's always good to see the data behind it and see what the top 10 results are actually using in their content. And then we can figure out how to incorporate that into our own. So again, this kind of takes the keyword research and just expands it. Once we have that, this is where we really want to dive a little bit deeper into the search intent as we looked at. So what type of content is ranking? Is it all blogs? Is it mixed? Are product pages there? Those are the types of questions you want to ask and have a good answer to before you start optimizing a page. We like to think about angles, like words like best in that case, sometimes the word fast. You might see some kind of common word that gives you another signal of what the search results are looking for. Where to give depth, we kind of always like to have a focus point of the article. So after looking at the search intent, looking at our keywords, talking to our client or the brand we're working at and what they really want to promote, we'll highlight that so it's front and center for the writer. Search features are always important as well. Nowadays, as you guys know, there's so many different things that are showing up in search results. Is there a featured snippet? We'll want to notate that. People also ask questions. We'll notate those here as well, because maybe we want to have an FAQ section or answer some of those in the content. So again, we're adding more information and giving the writer who's actually going to write the content more information to work with before they start doing that. So then this is where we'll get into, again, ClickFlow's content editor will give word count recommendations. It'll give a score. So we'll benchmark the current stats, and then whatever ClickFlow's recommendation is, we'll notate that here as well. So we might see that we have a short form article and everything on the first page is 2,000 plus words. So right away, we know we need to expand the content. And again, we're using data to determine that. The beautiful thing about using ClickFlow for that is you don't have to manually crawl the top 10 pages or manually go through them all. You can quickly get the data aggregated for you in terms of word count, which is going to save you just a ton of time clicking through search results and looking at competitors' content. So this is kind of benchmarking, and we'll set that. Then we'll get into traditional on-page SEO. So this is usually where, again, a lot of people stop. They're going to add internal links. Maybe you'll add an external link if it's a blog post. You're going to do kind of your standard on-page with your title tags, meta descriptions, heading tags. And this is where we see a lot of people fall short when they're optimizing something. So this is good. We want to do this. You want to make sure all these key elements are optimized. But the next step that really sets this apart, or we see is often missed, is actually making the content better. So what a lot of people do, again, they'll find the keywords, they'll optimize those tags, and then leave it there. We're really trying to figure out, how can we make this content better than what's actually ranking? And that's really the only way we've seen long-term results, is objectively creating the best piece of content on whatever subject we're going after. So with this, we have some standard tags we'll put in. So basically, we'll start outlining new sections we might want to add, sections to enhance that are already there. Maybe there's some sections that are fine, we leave them alone. And there might even sometimes be sections that are redundant, we want to remove or streamline. So we're basically breaking down every piece of the content and giving it a next step for the writer. So again, this gives them so much to work with when they're actually, now we're asking them to write content and expand it and make this better. We've already outlined a lot of what we need to do to get there. And now they take over with all this information. And we typically like to work out of one document. So we'll actually have our copywriter write their draft below, and ultimately we'll start incorporating that into the content itself. So really what we're trying to do here, again, is not just standard on-page SEO. You have to do that just to get there, but then actually really trying to make your content better than what's ranking, and thinking about that pretty deeply before we move on to the next step. So if we go back to the presentation here, so that's the content brief. And again, for new content, the content brief process is actually very similar. There's only some minor changes to it. We don't have existing content to work with. So we're more creating a loose outline instead of what you saw below. So very similar process for new content as well. So now ultimately, now that we have the content brief created, we've gave our writer all the information they need. We're actually going to go into ClickFlow's content editor and optimize the post in there as well. So our writer, and we're going to jump over there, is going to, we've already done the standard on-page SEO. Now we're really going to start thinking deep about those semantic keywords and the new sections we're adding. So if we head over to the content editor, I plugged this post in. This is one we're looking at. And right away, we could see why we're probably on page 3 for this post. Our content score is below the average. Our word count's below the average as well. So this is one that's a clear example. We want to go in and actually expand this content. And this is a quick way to see that objectively with some data. Our writer will actually work out of this editor as well, and you can see the scores and the stats change in real time. But what we really like, and the main reason we use this, is this list on the right, these semantically related keywords. Again, when we were doing keyword research and looking at the competitor, specific vitamins were things that showed up. And this is kind of doubling down on that. So we're not talking about specific vitamins in our article, like B12, B vitamins, vitamin D, L-theanine, amino acids. So really, we could clearly see this is a big miss on our article that we could go and incorporate and actually make this article better, because we're providing more value. We're explaining the subject more to people looking for it. And we actually have those terms. Vitamin E is another one that we want to use. So there's recommendations on how often to use them. We treat this more as kind of like an art than a science. So we're looking not necessarily to get exact for all of these. We just want to be in the ballpark. And this is what I look for, like clear misses like this, where we're not using any of these terms. So really what the writer can do, we've done the on-page. Now they're going to work on expanding the content. And right away, we know they need to start writing sections on specific vitamins to add to this post. And that's going to give us a big lift in terms of word count and ultimately getting our content score and just making the post better. So that's the great thing about this. You could work directly in it. It's just a standard word editor. And you could actually try and get your score as close as possible to some of these metrics. But again, it's more art than science. You don't have to obsess over it and try to get every single detail. But the important part is making that improvement and getting some of this into the content that wasn't there previously. So that's kind of our approach there to actually using the ClickFlow content editor. And again, this very important step. In that example, you could just really clearly see, and this is an example of one we've done afterwards. We've already optimized this. So you can see we like to get close enough to the metrics. We don't necessarily need to be exact, but you can see a lot of those semantic keywords were used in this post. And again, it's a big thing nowadays versus just looking at headings, titles, metas, like really improving the body copy and making the article in depth is what we look for. So this is just a quick example of one of those articles. So again, we took the article, it was getting little to no traffic. And pretty immediately, if you're ranking in that page 2 to 5 area, you can see results pretty quickly from content optimization. With standard SEO, a lot of people say sometimes 3 to 6 months. If you already have content that's out there and getting some visibility, a lot of times you can get results much quicker than you normally would with like a net new piece that's created. So that's one of the reasons we love this tactic, is you can get results leveraging what some of the work that's already been done and just kind of amplifying it and getting that traffic increase in a shorter term rather than kind of the longer term cycle that we normally see. So once we've done this, this moves us into the final step of the process. So we've done all the research, we created the brief, we've optimized it in ClickFlow. Now really we're getting into that post-publishing phase where we have kind of 2 main tactics here. Now for link building, what we're going to talk about in this process is a more tactical, strategic approach. There is also a general approach to link building. We kind of think of it in 2 phases. Your general approach is just going to be kind of like PR efforts, maybe doing guest blogs, just getting links pointing to your website, trying to build your domain authority. And depending on how far along your brand is, you may need to focus on that general approach more than others. If you're an established company, if you've been around, you have some brand visibility, we find really good success with this more strategic and targeted approach. But depending on where your company is, you may need both. You may need to lean more one way or the other. But for this process, we're really looking at being really targeted with those backlinks. So we'll get into that a little bit more. And then ultimately, once we get to the first page, we want to shift to click-through rate testing. So really what we've seen, and I know a lot of people have seen data on this, is if we improve click-through rate, we usually see our rankings improve pretty quickly afterwards. So once we're on the first page, our content's optimized, that's really when we're going into and doing title tag and meta description testing. And again, ClickFlow has a great feature that'll kind of analyze your data for you, so you don't have to manually do this in spreadsheets like we used to do. So this will be kind of the next step into the process here. So for link building again, so the way we think about it is, again, why build links if you don't have to? Why spend the resources? Why spend the effort if you don't need to? What we mean by that is sometimes you'll publish content and you may get to the first page without driving a single link to that piece of content. So in that case, you really don't have to spend the effort there. We could shift our link building focus to other content that may need it more. So what we like to do is once we publish something and we give it about 4 to 6 weeks, we'll see how far we get. In this example here, you'll see this content was published kind of late May. And within about a month, we started getting to page 2. And then just a couple weeks after that, we started slowly climbing up to page 1. So this was one where we didn't have to drive a link to it. We were able to utilize the link budget we had for this client on other pages. So we always like to say, if you see this and you're actually tracking your data, see what the results look like. If you get stuck on page 2 or 3 and you're not seeing any movement, that's when we lean on backlinks to try to drive that up onto page 1. So again, we're trying to be really targeted with these, depending on your client's budget. I know link building can get expensive. It takes a lot of resources. So we want to make sure we're allocating those the best way. And this is one of the main reasons we don't necessarily just start blasting a piece of content with links as soon as it's published. We're really trying to make sure we're maximizing those resources. So main thing we look for there. So again, just recapping this one last time. So in this case, you'll see within about 2 to 3 weeks, we move to the first page. So we typically like to wait about 4 to 6 before driving a backlink there. So if this didn't progress, this would have been a page we would have drove a backlink to. But because we started climbing up onto the first page, we were able to just go straight to click-through rate testing and skip the link building step. So that's really our kind of thought process behind that. And one of the main reasons we utilize link building in that way. So again, there is a case for a general approach. If you have no backlinks, you're a brand new brand, you're going to need some general links pointing to your site. But once you've done that, that's really where you can start getting more strategic and tactical with the links you're driving. So now the next step in post-publishing is click-through rate testing. So here is kind of how everyone used to do it. You have a big spreadsheet, you're pulling in your changes you're making, you're tracking it, you're getting the data from Google Search Console most likely. What we've shifted to is really utilizing ClickFlow's actual experiment feature where you could input your change directly in there and it's going to track the results for you. So what we really like is visually you can quickly see the % change in clicks, your click-through rate, what happened with your average position. And this is all pulled in from Google Search Console. So again, this just makes it so much easier and more efficient to see what's actually happening with these tests. when you're running a lot of these at scale, using a spreadsheet can get pretty daunting pretty quickly. So having this visual that you can just quickly click through and see the results is really key at doing this at scale consistently. The other thing I like to that we often use is sometimes you'll see at the aggregate view, your click-through rate doesn't actually increase. So if you click see details, and we'll jump over to a test that we can look at. So in this case, what's also nice, you could actually see visually the changes. So you could see what we did with the old title and the new title. But in this case, we can see clicks went way up, but click-through rate actually went down. So at first glance, that looks kind of strange. It looks interesting. So what we like to do is if you click show details, this will actually show you all of the keywords. Let's see, once this redirects here, it'll show you all of the keywords this article is ranking for. So what we see is often we see an increase in the number of keywords. So the click-through rate can go down because there's new keywords you're ranking for in a low position. But when we actually look at our target keywords, and in this case, you could start to see, let's actually go to the other test here. So what I wanted to look at is, yeah, let's look at the ADHD one. So in this example, this is the one where click-through rate went down overall. So what you'll see is our target keywords actually went way up. So here we can see click-through rates up 55%, 30% for this next keyword. It's going to fluctuate, but that's the main thing we look for. Sometimes the aggregate view can be misleading because there's about 50 to 100 other keywords we're ranking for. So again, you can clearly see the percent change. If this went down, that's a sign that you need to rewrite the title and meta again. Whatever you did just didn't resonate. So you can quickly see that at a glance here, which just streamlines this whole process and makes it a lot more efficient. So again, you could run as many of these as you want and really quickly see the results of some of those tests. So ultimately, what that does for us. So again, click-through rate testing, I know this is a concept everyone's getting familiar with nowadays. The way we like to think about it in simple terms, if more people are clicking on position 5 than position 3, that's basically real-time data to Google that position 5 is a better result because users are basically informing them that with their click. So that's one of the reasons we focus so heavily on this once we get to the first page. We've seen time and time again, if we're able to increase click-through rate, our rankings typically always follow. And we'll typically then you kind of get that snowball effect because as your rankings increase, your click-through rate is going to increase more just by your position. So you can really start to see ultimately the lift in clicks, which is what everyone wants. And that's really the main thing we're looking at when we're doing this testing. So as far as results, the one at the top, this is cover 3, again, the brain health supplement company that we basically optimized a set of pages using this exact process for their website. They were a very small website that we got them to their first couple thousand sessions per month. And then we did this again for another client in a health industry, kind of 3x traffic in less than a year. And again, they started at a little bit higher of a point here at about 4,000 organic sessions. We got them just over the 13,000 mark. I'm using this exact step-by-step process of going through all their content, figuring out how to make it better. And then once we get there, using links or click-through rate testing as we start to reach that page 2 and page 1 area. So again, just so you could visually see what we look for in this. So typically when you optimize content, we're looking for pages that have some visibility. So in this case, you can see the rankings were spotty. There were some days we were ranking, some days we weren't. You can see that by this orange line wasn't consistent. So that tells us like Google's kind of experimenting and showing us for the keywords somewhat, but we're just, our content must not be good enough because we're not consistently even showing up on page 5 in this case. So once we've optimized it, you could see we started to get some more consistency. And then this is where we look through the backlinks in this range here. Once you see we're kind of not rankings aren't progressing, we'll target it with a backlink. And then the click-through rate testing was, which ultimately gives us that little incremental lift to get to closer to position 1. You can see we were kind of mid first page as we started this, and ultimately got to position 1 recently with the click-through rate testing in ClickFlow. So again, another example from a different page. Again, you'll start to see patterns in this where, again, a spotty ranking that we went through the optimization process, targeted it with a backlink, and then shifted the click-through rate testing here. Again, we were around position 3 when we did the click-through rate testing, but it was enough to get us ultimately to position 1 more consistently. And rankings are always going to fluctuate. You're going to see that. Sometimes you'll go up and down between position 1 and 2, but the main thing is to look at that trend when we're doing this type of work. And then one more example. This one was a more consistent keyword. So they were kind of bottom of the first page. But after reviewing the content, we went through that same process, optimizing. We didn't really see the movement we wanted. And actually pretty quickly after targeting it with a backlink, there was actually an initial drop. And then we basically shot right up almost to position 1. And then there was another drop. And this is where we went into click-through rate testing, where ultimately now we're getting the consistency that we want in position 1.
John, this is awesome stuff. I love seeing this graph of average position with just the different phases of content optimization. I think it really illuminates this. There is a question in the chat. Alexandra asks, John, how do you choose pages for CTR testing? Do you prioritize them in any way?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to do it. We actually have a tool we built in Google Sheets that will, we could share that after this, the download, that will analyze your average position at the top 10 search result spots. So you could set your own benchmarks. I'll actually pull the tool up real quick, just so you guys can see it. And what this does, so you can get industry benchmarks for click-through rate. Those are good. We use them as a starting point. But with this, you actually import your Google Search Console data, and it'll tell you what your average click-through rate as each of the top 10 spots. Then you could easily benchmark. If you see you're in position 5, but you're below your own average, that's a great sign that if you can just get that keyword click-through rate up to your own average, you're going to see a big lift. So this tool will actually give a recommendation. It's not filled in now. When you import it, it'll tell you which pages and keywords have a low click-through rate here, and then give you an estimate on how much traffic you can get just by getting to your own benchmark. And that's not even taking into account, if you exceed your benchmark, you're going to get even more. So this is the main way we do it. It's a more automated way. If you don't use a tool like this, just going into Search Console and looking at pages that have a lot of impressions or keywords that have a lot of impressions. So if we go back here, because yeah, obviously you'll want to prioritize and get the most impact. Sometimes you can sort by impressions. I like to do that. And here we can see this one kind of stands out. There's 35,000 impressions, but only 7 clicks. So what I would do here, this would cause me just to investigate. So let's take a look at the keywords here that we're seeing. So we see best focus supplements around page 4. So this is a pretty good example. This might be a page we'd consider optimizing. Focus supplements around page 5, tons of impressions. So if you're going to go the manual way, just looking at pages or even at the keyword level, you could do the same thing at keywords. What keywords are getting the most impressions? And then again, we see the same thing, brain supplements, focus supplements. So that's usually how I would prioritize. But I do really like using any kind of Google Sheets type tool, especially with this benchmark feature. That's something I haven't really seen too often. I do see a lot of people put out like industry benchmarks, which are great, but actually having your own data where you could objectively see like, these are our benchmarks, and then you can quickly see where are you below average on your own site. So we'll give the download to this as a free tool we have. And it's very easy to use, and you guys can play around with it.
Awesome. Appreciate you throwing that in, John. I think folks are going to get a lot of value. A couple more questions that just came in. So John asks, what is your strategy for backlink targeting and getting the backlinks? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the main tactic we're using nowadays is just guest blog posting. So there's a ton of other tactics. That's the one that we consistently see work well. What we try to do first is actually leverage partnerships or relationships our clients might already have. Often on their own, they're not necessarily thinking about SEO and backlinks. So they may have a relationship with a vendor or some type of partner that they work with that we can coordinate to do a guest blog with. The beautiful thing about that is we're not doing cold outreach. It's already a warm kind of lead, so to say, for a guest blog post. So that's always step one. If you have any relationships with other businesses, partners, even tools that you use, you can reach out to those tool providers and try to collaborate with them on content. Anything you can do where you're leveraging a relationship is always step one. Eventually, you're going to run out of those opportunities. There's only so many. So that's when we do shift to more cold outreach, where we'll just do kind of the standard prospecting. We really like to focus on industry relevance as our kind of first and foremost thing when we're looking at backlinks. We don't necessarily, for our clients, want to get backlinks from as many websites as possible. We really want to make sure there's value in the link and the links are relevant. So we'll do manual research, just going into Google, typing in different keywords that are related to what they do, and trying to find websites that write about similar topics. We'll put those into a Google Sheet, get the contact info, and then just start writing email pitches to them on why. We like to focus on the value they're going to get from the guest post. We'll usually highlight, like we have these blogs that are getting thousands of clicks per month, just so we can highlight that they're going to get some value out of it. So that's always what we like to lead with, to try to improve those success rates a little bit. but it is it's a long process. You do have to do a lot of that research and really send a lot of those out. But we really lean on the guest blog posting end. Competitor backlinks are another thing you can look at. That's always good as well. We like to do in Ahrefs like a backlink gap report where you can cross-reference where multiple competitors are featured. The nice thing about that, again, is if more than one competitor are featured somewhere, our chances go up a little bit of potentially getting featured there as well. So we like to see if like 5 of our competitors are all featured on the same website. That's a good indication there's probably a way we can get on that website. So those are probably the 2 main things that we use consistently. And really that's what we always end up leaning on, both of those tactics.
Awesome. One more. So April asks, how many keywords or long tail keywords would you recommend using in organic social media posts? How effective would this be by what you've seen with other companies? So sounds like using keywords that are SEO driven in organic social. Perhaps April's talking about social signals, which Google does take into effect.
Yeah, we do like to, and we don't necessarily include it in the process here, but as part of the post-publishing workflow, it is good to kind of piece up the content and make some different social posts with it. We do like doing that. You're going to get extra eyes on it. You're going to get some shares. Sometimes we even see we get backlinks that way as well. Because again, we're trying to create a piece of content that's objectively better than what's ranking. So a lot of times you'll get natural backlinks. When you end up ranking on the first page, as people are doing research for their articles, they'll cite you as a source. We see that all the time when we have something really good. But even on the social end, just by kind of breaking up the content, turning it into social content, dripping that out, you're going to get some, depending on your social following, you may even get some visibility directly to the post, but you're also just going to get more eyes on it and more chance for some natural backlinks. The other thing there that we also like to look at with social is, again, you're getting that engagement. Sometimes you could even do a small paid social push if there's a particular piece of content you really want to get eyes on fast. Especially if there's some lead gen element to it. A lot of times with our resource content, we'll have some type of kind of lead magnet asset that people can opt into. So we'll also sometimes use paid social when we put out a long form blog and drive people there to try to get those content downloads in. So there's that's more, we don't always see an SEO impact from that, but a lot of times you'll get some leads and some revenue in while the organic search is taking some time to get some traction. But we use social more as just an amplification kind of tool.
Yeah, that's a great tactic. We've seen success with that too, just sharing on social, including in your email list in your newsletter, if you have one. So Gregory asks, this is a great question. Does this process for organic traffic work with marketplaces like Amazon and Walmart?
So with Amazon and Walmart, the interesting thing with sites like that is they don't always need good content to rank well. So for a site like that, a lot of times they rank just based on authority. And based on the fact that Google knows people, if someone's searching a product, they probably want to see an Amazon listing or a Walmart listing. So it still can work. You'd have to think about it a little bit deeper, and you probably have to be a little more selective on what content is actually worth updating, because they're going to have millions of pages on their website. So it's still something you can utilize. We find more success with this for really any brands that if you're just getting started, you have to focus more on new content. But once you've been around for a little bit, and maybe you've even invested in SEO for a little while and didn't get the traction you wanted, and you have some content out there, that's typically what we like to focus on. So if you're in the anywhere from 500 sessions to maybe 20 to 50,000 a month, even, that's a good range to use a lot of these tactics. As you start really growing, then the prioritizing really becomes important. But for Amazon and Walmart, it's interesting. They don't really need in-depth guides or resource content. Where your brand may, if you don't have that type of authority in your space. That's really the only way we found actually outranking Amazon in the case of our brain health company. We have the company we work with, Cover3, which you can look, has very little domain authority. We are actually able to outrank Amazon for some BDNF supplement keywords, which actually this is a good example, actually. Let's pull that up. So here you could see for BDNF supplements, we also have a kids brain health supplements. I think it's kid. Let's see if we do this on the fly. Let's see if this is still ranking. So, yeah, so you can see even here where we actually outranked Amazon using this process with a site that has not even close to the authority that Amazon and a lot of these other Walmart, you'll see as well, a lot of these other listings have, WebMD. So again, having better content is the only way you can get an edge over somebody that has way more authority than you. So A little bit of a side note there, but that's kind of what we like to look for in terms of authority.
Awesome. And before we keep going, one tactic that I've seen work well when you're selling on Amazon or some of these third-party retailers, what you can do is you can send traffic that you've earned through a process like John is talking about to your listing. And that's more so for ranking higher in the search results on Amazon or Walmart, because those sites, their algorithms are much simpler than Google's. And, if you send traffic to your listing, oftentimes that's a pretty strong signal to them. Okay, this is a relevant listing that should rank higher, even if you have fewer reviews, et cetera, from compared to other competitors. So maybe try that out. Awesome. Cool. Let's keep rocking, John.
Awesome. So yeah, that's the process there. So again, we really wanted to leave you guys with step-by-step process that you can incorporate into your own workflow. So take what we've done here and figure out how that fits into your own process. And that's really how you're going to take this presentation and really make it actionable. What we like to see again is just having a process is really the best way we've found to get consistent results. And again, the framework, the process, documenting your process is really how you do this at scale. And again, the consistency is important. Everyone has the story of you publish something and all of a sudden you started ranking, you're not even really sure why. Really here, we want to take that a step further. And again, use this framework to get past those sticking points as well, which are always going to happen. You could do all the research in the world, produce the best piece of content, but you just get stuck on page 2 or page 3. And then you could go back and lean on some of this process to get you to the first page. And then once you're on the first page, now you know what to do to try to drive your ranking up, ultimately in the top 3. So the Done With You coaching now. So with that, what we wanted to highlight today is a new coaching program that we're rolling out. So the idea with this is for some of you out there that may not have the budget yet to hire a full-fledged SEO agency, we've come up with a coaching and consulting format, which will be a fraction of the cost that it would normally take to work with us or any other agency. And we can work with you step by step to incorporate a lot of what we just covered directly into your business, but also to make sure you're getting the most out of ClickFlow. So if you're an existing ClickFlow customer, we're going to make sure you're utilizing all the features, utilizing all the reporting and incorporating it into your workflow to really get results. We're going to be doing any questions that you have about SEO. You'll have access to our full team to ask. So anytime you get stuck, you're not seeing the progress you want, you'll have access to us to be able to kind of work through whatever issues you're having. And we'll give you guidance on what pages to test. We'll give you recommendations on what to actually change on those pages. We'll help you with content briefs. So it's really like having an SEO department that you can go and take and incorporate in your business before you may be ready to invest in a full kind of SEO done for you program. So this will be kind of done with you. You'll have us to lean on, and we'll work you through all the steps you really need to take to actually get to that next level, where now you have revenue coming in, and now maybe you can invest more and actually hire an agency and take some of that work off your plate. So that's the main thing. We have 5 spots opening up for this. So we wanted to keep this small and exclusive so we can really have that personal touch and work with you guys closely. So we're only going to roll this out to 5 spots, which will be starting coming up here in November. So with that, we do have a landing page here with more of the details. And again, if you're not ready, or if you're not at the point ready where you're ready for Done With You coaching, ClickFlow is also offering trials to their tool as well. So if you want more of a do-it-yourself approach, that's another great option as well. And you can start getting up and running with ClickFlow right away. So awesome, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Excellent. So I will drop the link to Chosen Data's ClickFlow landing page if folks want to check that out and explore Done With You coaching. And thanks for mentioning that, John. If folks would prefer to just execute on this process, we will be sending out the recording. And if you want to do this yourself with your team, delegate this, of course, feel free to go to clickflow.com and you can start a trial. You can request a demo. And if folks have additional questions, we'll be sending out follow-up emails. So feel free to just hit reply, and we're happy to answer any of those questions. Thanks again, everyone, for showing up. Thank you, John, for an awesome training. We'll talk to you all soon. Take care.
Take care, guys.